I have enjoyed reading books for quite the time right now, and I've been writing my own fiction as well. So, I naturally had the question in my mind. ChatGPT could write stories for children. But what about for adults? What about that quality? Well, can GPT 4o pull it off? I had this question in me, and naturally, I'm gonna challenge it today to find that out.
Hey everyone! Today, Monish and I are embarking on an exciting writing challenge. We're going to see who can craft better stories between us. We'll be judged on three key aspects: describing scenes vividly, creating dynamic dialogue, and spinning captivating narratives. Are you ready for this literary duel?
Now, this ought to be my description of the fjords, so hear me closely. The sounds of the gulls pierced my ears. A bitter scent came from the winds. Stood on our hull, I observed the scene. I could see massive hills coated by greens, and lowly trows and canals welcoming our ship. The trows were coated with peach. Above the trows, the warm grey hills wore hazy linen clouds. The sky wore a perfect blue this day, as did the waterway we sailed on. However, there was more in this waterway. Ravines, wavy grass beds, and roughly made stone arcs and pillars were a few among them. Navy bodies of blubber, spotted with white, graced these grassy beds beneath, looking for fish and eel that hid within. Two such bodies surfaced, splashing onto us water as heavy as their blubbers, and a few translucent fish. Submerging yet again, these giants carried in their jaws a school of fish each. They swam the cold grey arcs and into the ravine's mouth, beyond which we could not see. Yep, that was my description of the scene's beauty, just as ChatGPT would put it. Draped in fine linen, she stood there, flaunting her pista straps and frock. She was as tall as two-thirds of a door. Her black eyes gazed at me for a brief second and then away. The leakage of light from the canopy far above us illuminated her to me. Walking through the pebbled lands, I reached her vicinity. Her hair was neatly tucked into a red ribbon and flowed like silk. The light now covered us both. She turned around, revealing her oval face covered in fine bangs. Her face looked curvy, yet sharp. Her jawbones weren't very pronounced. As we locked gazes, her lips widened to a smile. She held her hands behind her back and broke out a blush bright and pink. She gently tugged forward, and I took the moment and seized it. Her lips felt like cotton, unlike mine. Her cheeks turned rosy, and she tucked herself back. Eyes open, she stared at my face. "You aren't imaginary," she spoke. Her rosy cheeks turned all the more rosier.
In the heart of Norway, a small boat glided silently through the fjords. The water was a deep, sapphire blue, reflecting the towering cliffs that surrounded it. Each cliff was a marvel, draped in lush emerald green moss that seemed to glow under the soft sunlight. Waterfalls cascaded down the rocky faces, sending up mists that created delicate rainbows, dancing in the air. The air was crisp and filled with the scent of pine, while the distant calls of seabirds echoed through the fjords. At the base of the cliffs, tiny, colorful villages nestled comfortably, their quaint cottages mirrored in the tranquil waters below. The scene was one of serene, untouched beauty, a perfect blend of nature's grandeur and human simplicity. For the beautiful woman with a cottagecore aesthetic, in a quiet Scottish village, nestled among rolling hills and wildflower meadows, lived a woman who embodied the essence of cottagecore beauty. She spent her mornings wandering through fields, her simple, flowing linen dress swaying gently with each step. The dress, in soft pastel hues, seemed to blend seamlessly with the blooming wildflowers that surrounded her. Her hair, a cascade of natural waves, was adorned with a crown of freshly picked daisies and lavender, enhancing her ethereal appearance. Her eyes were gentle and warm, mirroring the clear blue sky, and her cheeks held a faint blush as if kissed by the morning sun. She carried a wicker basket brimming with fruits and flowers, each item carefully chosen for its natural beauty. Her presence exuded a quiet grace and tranquility, making her a living embodiment of the serene pastoral life she cherished.
So let me tell you something. My decision as jury is a tie. Because on the first one, I did more telling than showing properly. But on the second one, I absolutely wrecked it. At least that's what I think. We tried to describe a beautiful girl, and I find that mine invokes more of a visual in the reader's head, even when I look at it from a third person standpoint, and it really doesn't. So, for those reasons, and for its passage flow on the first one as compared to mine, it wins the first one, and I win the second one. So, on to round 2, which is dialogue. So, as the AI gets to draft everything up in its head again and again, and then select the best words from the probability tensors, I get to do that too. So, I went in a little bit for the corrections, as you can see here. So, let's continue. Master, I have something to ask. Go ahead, nephew. No mind. Can I have some traveler's tea? Depends on what you do with it. Father came in my dreams. I can sense your pain, Lloyd, but we cannot awaken the dead as we please. There are consequences. I mean, Master Wu, the Oni, they could get back here any time now. We need him. Lloyd, your thoughts cloud your judgment. Even if they do, it is not correct, Lloyd. I guess, Sensei. The past can be painful, Lloyd. Our minds seek reasons to quench its pain. Awakening your father would dishonor his actions. I will not allow it. So, this was my dialogue, and now I'll present Gipt's version of this. No, not that one. I'm talking about the dialogue we penned earlier.
Sure, here's the refined dialogue. Master Wu, I've been having dreams about my father. It's like he's trying to tell me something. Dreams can be powerful, Lloyd, but they can also mislead. What do you think he's saying? I think he wants me to bring him back. With the Oni potentially returning, we need his help. Lloyd, The path of life and death is not one to tread lightly. Your father made his choices, but we need him. Woo. Even if the Oni are supposed to be gone forever, what if they do return? Your father's strength lives within you, Lloyd. Trust in yourself and your friends. Seeking shortcuts can lead to greater dangers.
Okay, now, as jury, here is my opinion. Drum roll. Gipt takes the dub. I actually showed these two to different people, and one among them was a screenwriter. He believed that the Gipt one was more visualizable inside of Ninjago, and my cousin, who is a die-hard Ninjago fan, he believes that the last line, it nailed it perfectly, and I think so too. So for those reasons, Gipt takes the dub. Had I watched Lego Ninjago before this, it is a high probability that I would have got the dub. I did not get the dub. So let's continue to the next section, which is spinning a narrative. Using both description and dialogue, we have to write a section of a story. And I'll reveal to you the section of the story we ought to write today. Now. Now I shall be narrating the story that I came up to you. Okay, so I think you read the background up. Let's start. Little Tim dozed off. The bed he lay on top of was cargoed to the Watterson manor. Perhaps he was mistaken to be a pillow. Mr. Sanders, the man who wore the bow and the blazers, slid through the sandy cardboard box with a scutter that showed the manor on both its sides. Its edge, like the tip of a tiger's claw, cut through the brown tape effortlessly. The cardboard split like butter, revealing to him the work he had brought from the furniture store. He took it up the flight of oak stairs with the hands of the servants. When the elevation was high enough, down fell a little boy in a Sunday clothing. He tumbled down the stairs, and fell to the fluffy velvet carpet. Lights of different hues fell on him from the gigantic glass frames of the entryway. Mr. Watterson entered via the wooden frame. His secretary and his wife, Miss Watterson, held the golden knob for him. He saw the kid open his eyes and spoke. "Sanders, who is this child?" "I do not know, sir," Sanders replied. Miss Watterson, a woman of a short stature, with a ran to the child, holding her puffy frock in her hands. Over the planks, no. She had put her rubber slippers into the shoe hull before, and had not yet wore her moccasins. The kid spoke. "Who am I?" Mr. Sanders put his hand over his temples and spoke, parting his springy hair that fell to his face in the process. He clenched his sharp jaws and spoke. "Sir, there has been a mistake," as he bowed to Mr. Watterson. Mr. Watterson, in his silky indigo, looked at the servants dressed in dyed linen. Mr. Watterson spoke. "Take care of the child. We will find his parents." Mrs. Watterson looked to the swirling stairways and to the launch. She spoke. "Sanders, Could you please take him to the lounge and have him fed? The short boy with a washed yellow face. Short boy with washed yellow hair looked at Miss Watterson, who sat crouched beside him. Are you my mom? He spoke, looking at his maroon sweater, thick with yarn showing. She looked into his blue eyes, observing his little round face. No, dear, don't worry, we'll find her soon, she assured him with a smile. Mr. Sanders came with Miss Sanders, a young lady with a fluffy checkered blue frock, and took him. And also, Sanders, get him some cotton, she said. Yes, ma'am, replied Miss Sanders, and held his hand and took him to the lounge. Mr. Watterson went up the flight of stairs to the second story to get changed for his game at the lawn, and Miss Watterson continued to command the servants, both wrinkled and unwrinkled, to tend to the child.
Sure, here we go. The late afternoon sun bathed the grand foyer of the Elwood estate in a warm, golden light. Boxes, elegantly wrapped and tied with thick satin bows, were scattered around as if an extravagant party had just ended. Mrs. Elwood, a woman of grace and poise, stood with a pair of gold-plated scissors, carefully cutting through the ribbons with the precision of a surgeon. Darling, this is simply splendid, she called to her husband, Mr. Elwood, who was busy supervising the delivery men carrying in more pieces of the luxurious new furniture. Indeed, he replied, a hint of satisfaction in his voice. This will make the summer house on our private island even more exquisite. Mrs. Elwood peeled back the lid of one particularly large box, revealing a sumptuously upholstered bed. She marveled at the craftsmanship, her fingers brushing over the fine stitching. But something else caught her eye. A lump beneath the thick, luxurious duvet that seemed out of place. Henry, come look at this, she said, curiosity piquing her voice. Mr. Elwood approached, his brows furrowing as they both leaned closer. With a gentle tug, Mrs. Elwood pulled back the duvet, and there, nestled deep in the soft, downy blankets, was a small, sleeping boy. His dark curls were tousled, his face peaceful and unaware of the commotion around him. Mrs. Elwood gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Henry, there's a child here? Mr. Elwood's eyes widened in shock. How on earth did he get here? The boy stirred, his eyelids fluttering open. He looked around, confused and frightened, the unfamiliar surroundings overwhelming him. Where am I? He murmured, his voice trembling. Mrs. Elwood knelt beside the bed, her voice soothing and gentle. It's all right, dear. You're safe. What's your name? Tommy, the boy whispered, tears welling up in his eyes. I fell asleep in a furniture store. I want my mommy and daddy. Mrs. Elwood looked up at her husband, her eyes filled with concern. Henry, we need to find his parents. They must be worried sick. Mr. Elwood nodded, already pulling out his phone to make the necessary calls. Don't worry, Tommy, he said reassuringly. We'll find your parents and get you back home. You're safe with us until then. As the Elwoods began the search for Tommy's family, the boy curled up in the soft bed once more, feeling a strange mix of comfort and longing. This unexpected journey was just the beginning of an adventure that none of them could have ever imagined.
Jury here with the final scores. Today, I'm going to present it to you as jury. Yes, I'm the jury. Okay, in my personal opinion, Gipt won the last round. But I guess you could say that was subjective because I described a lot of the things it didn't, and it described a lot of things that I didn't. And yeah, you see how clunky the comparison would be if I were to do it right. But some of the times it actually mentioned a few things that were kind of cool, so I thought I'd give it the point. You can disagree with me in the comment section. Maybe you can give me 1.5 as to 1.5 points, and that will make us equal. But still, In my opinion, it won. My overall review on this GPT-4's writing capability is as follows. It can write, but it has a very bad case of purple prose. Purple prose is when you describe something in a really clunky way. It's almost like somebody just stole it from a textbook and put it on the page. I think you get me, right? And that is one part where it falls apart, and dialogue sometimes it messes up. And these are two of the parts where it messed up, like the time when Master Wu asked a question to Lloyd. That's not how Master Wu asks questions. It was very not Master Wu-y. And that was literally it. My name is Bonish, the channel's name is Monster. If you like this video and want more like this, subscribe, hit the bell, set it to silent, and like this video so that the algorithm knows that you like it and it can show it to more people. Yeah, bye.